to our continued cooperation, gentlemen.
As the tide of war turned, the architects of victory, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, met more frequently. At the Tehran Conference, the most important decision that Stalin had long desired was finally accepted. A second front would be opened against the Nazis in Europe, and the target of the operation would be the coast of France. While preparations for the second front were underway, Hitler attempted one last major offensive in the east at Kursk. In the summer of 1943, the vast plains of Kursk witnessed the largest and bloodiest tank battle in history. This was a crushing defeat that exhausted the last major offensive strength of the German army on the Eastern Front. The Allies landed in Sicily in 1943 to enter the fortress of Europe through its soft underbelly. This invasion led to the fall of Mussolini from power and Italy's signing of an armistice. German commandos rescued Mussolini, enabling him to establish a puppet regime in the north. The Germans occupied Italy and slowed the Allied advance with bloody battles like Monte Cassino on the Gustav Line. The landing at Anzio failed to break the German defense and turned into a months-long stalemate. Meanwhile, the Allied air forces were targeting Germany with the combined bomber offensive. Long-range fighter planes like the P-51 Mustang made these raids more effective by protecting the bomber fleets. The bombing of cities like Hamburg and Dresden caused great controversy due to civilian casualties. Turkey, under the leadership of President İsmet İnönü, remained out of the war with a delicate policy of balance. June 6, 1944. On the longest day in history, a massive armada was approaching the shores of Normandy. Paratrooper units landed behind German lines hours before the invasion to secure key points. Thanks to deception operations like Operation Fortitude, the Germans had misjudged the location of the landing. The ground troops of the operation, commanded by Eisenhower, were led by Montgomery and Bradley. D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history, had begun, albeit with heavy losses. Allied soldiers fought a bloody struggle against the death-spewing German positions on beaches like Omaha. With the opening of the Second Front, Adolf Hitler was now caught between two fires. Weeks after Normandy, the Soviets completely shattered the Eastern Front with Operation Bagration. The Allies broke out of Normandy with Operation Cobra and liberated Paris with French forces under General Leclerc. Operation Market Garden in the Netherlands was a bold but failed attempt for the Allies. In the Pacific, the Battle of Leyte Gulf was the largest naval battle, effectively destroying the Japanese Navy. The Red Army was advancing with unstoppable force and great speed towards Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. Meanwhile, in Warsaw, the Polish resistance rose up against the Germans, but Soviet help never came. In the winter of 1944, Hitler played his final gamble in the Ardennes, known as the Battle of the Bulge. German commandos in American uniforms created chaos behind Allied lines. The massacre of American prisoners at Malmedy further strengthened Allied resolve. The American resistance at Bastogne played a key role in the failure of this final German offensive. The Germans tried to spread terror by bombing cities like London with V-1 and V-2 rockets. As the end of the war approached, the Big Three were shaping the post-war world at Yalta in the Crimea. The end had now begun, and Allied armies were entering Germany from both the east and the west. The Soviets discovered Majdanek, and the Americans confronted the horror of the Holocaust by finding camps like Ohrdruf. American and Soviet soldiers met at the Elbe River, symbolizing that they had split Germany in two. The Red Army besieged Berlin, and the city turned into a ruin where children and the elderly conscripted into the Volkssturm fought. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler escaped by committing suicide in his bunker beneath the ruins of Berlin. On May 8, 1945, the German army unconditionally surrendered, and the guns in Europe finally fell silent. When the smoke of war cleared, the Holocaust, the darkest secret in human history, was revealed. The final solution plan, decided upon at the Wannsee Conference, was the code name for an industrial genocide. Bureaucrats like Adolf Eichmann meticulously organized the logistics of this genocide. When Allied soldiers liberated the concentration camps, the scene they encountered was beyond words. Those found in camps like Bergen-Belsen and Dachau were living witnesses to Nazi brutality. Emaciated people and mass graves were the silent proof of an industrial genocide. In extermination camps like Auschwitz, approximately 6 million people, mostly Jews, were systematically exterminated. While peace was declared in Europe, Japan continued to fight with fanatical resistance in the Pacific. Kamikaze pilots carried out suicide attacks by crashing their planes into Allied ships. Events like the firebombing of Tokyo raised civilian casualties to incredible levels. The bloody battles on the islands of Iwo Jima and Okinawa clearly showed the cost of invading Japan. The civilian and military casualties on Okinawa were a significant factor in the decision to use the atomic bomb. Meanwhile, the USA had developed the atomic bomb through a secret program called the Manhattan Project. In July 1945, at Potsdam, The Allied leaders, now with Truman and Attlee, gave Japan the final ultimatum. While the Japanese military leadership rejected the ultimatum, Emperor Hirohito was seeking ways for peace. President Truman decided to use the bomb to prevent the heavy casualties that an invasion would cause. On August 6, 1945, the plane named Enola Gay dropped the Little Boy bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, on August 9th, the Boxcar plane dropped the Fat Man bomb on Nagasaki. In the same days, the Soviet Union's invasion of Manchuria also hastened Japan's decision to surrender. Faced with the atomic bombs and the Soviet invasion, Japan had no strength left to resist. On September 2, 1945, the war officially ended with the surrender document signed aboard the USS Missouri battleship. The war left behind a legacy of 60 to 80 million dead, most of them civilians, and cities turned to rubble. Nazi leaders were tried at the Nuremberg trials, and Japanese war criminals were tried in Tokyo. The United Nations organization was established for global peace, with the hope of preventing future conflicts. The foundations of the post-war economic order were laid with the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. To rebuild post-war Europe, the USA implemented the Marshall Plan. The Truman Doctrine formed the basis of the policy of containing the spread of communism. However, two new superpowers emerged on the world stage: the capitalist United States and the communist Soviet Union. Colonial empires collapsed. Countries like India gained their independence, and new conflicts began. As a consequence of the Holocaust, the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 changed the destiny of the Middle East. The division of Germany and Berlin was symbolized by Churchill's Iron Curtain speech in Fulton. The Berlin blockade and airlift went down in history as the first major crisis of the Cold War. With the establishment of NATO and the Warsaw Pact, the world became the stage for a bipolar military tension. Their wartime alliance gave way to the tension of the Cold War, which would last for nearly 50 years. World War II was the darkest and most painful proof of what humanity could do to itself, but it also remained a monument to the courage and sacrifice shown in the most difficult moments.